To go fast and not take up too much time. So I didn't do an introduction. I'm a researcher and teacher. I've been researching and teaching in a number of areas, mainly auditory neuroscience. But I also taught courses. I designed and taught a course on consciousness, a survey course for undergraduates. And I've been involved somewhat peripherally in the consciousness and neuroscience research arena. And I definitely agree with you guys that in the neural global workspace models, I think I'm mainly reacting to the paper that you posted on SciComm. And I also have my own. It needs to make clearer what field theory entails in terms of neural processes and exactly what it explains. I think from what you just said, you have in mind that it's a field theory of relations. It's a relational field theory or an organization field theory. I have my own take on that in terms of regenerative loops of neural signals, and basically the contents of present awareness being those signals that are actively regenerated in global loops at any one period of time. And that's very similar, again, to the global neural workspace theories and Steve Grossberg's conception and all that. We differ in terms of what the nature of the neural signals are. I think that they're temporal patterns of spikes. And I think we can also agree on major features of conscious awareness, and maybe, and also that you have private observables of subjective experience and neural public observables of externally measured aspects of neural systems. So my general comments, I'm just going to summarize them. We can get down into them if you'd like. First, I think we agree on a great deal of issues, including observer-bound epistemology, cybernetics, and global workspace type theories, as well as brains as adaptive pattern resonance systems, and switching between attractor basins, which I would call informational differences depending upon the signals involved. If you have a field theory that goes beyond those, please flesh out the details more fully. I think of them as informational fields, as you say, but informational, not in the general sense of information. And it looks like a theory of mental functions rather than about awareness per se. So I would urge you to draw out what it entails, what are the forces, what does it explain, specifically in terms of conscious awareness. The third thing is, I would say, do your homework and reference other theories, discussions, and debates. People like Roy John have proposed field theories of consciousness in the past, and it would do you well to, and probably these field theories go back to Lashley and further back even than that. The fourth thing is, I would counsel you to be humble and don't overclaim, that you've got something, a new theory of consciousness that's better than sliced bread. The fifth, I would avoid these philosophical posed problems. Chalmers' hard problem is a question of existence. It's not even answerable. It's like asking why gravity exists. It's ill-posed. And the zombie problem itself is tautological. By its construction as an either-or situation, it basically assumes its conclusions. So I think, I don't know, it's up to us, but I think it's more productive to focus on the issue of whether awareness per se has informational and survival value. And the paper asserts that awareness has function, relying mostly on common sense sentiment, but it does not offer arguments or evidence for why this should be so. And I think we could productively delve more fully into this issue. Now, my own ontology and epistemology is actually, I think, pretty similar to yours. I think that conscious awareness, however, is produced only in material systems that are organized in a particular way. This comes from theoretical biology. Organization, functions supervene on organization that is embedded in a material system. mind is the organization of informational processes in brains. Awareness depends entirely, which is a somewhat different thing, but related, depends entirely on the organization of neural signaling processes in brains. Obviously, if you have anesthesia, the neurons don't stop firing, they're just firing in incoherent patterns. So although awareness depends on neural organizations, in particular, something like a working memory or global working memory, that have definite survival functions, awareness itself has no function. It's an inherent aspect of the world. And so what empirical science can address are the neural requisites and correlates of awareness. And I have a bunch of other slides, and would like to ask you about what is your ontology, which isn't really spelled out in the paper. Whether I'm not an limited phenomenalist or a limited materialist. I tend to adopt epiphenomenalism, that you have descriptions of the material realm, physical process, that produces concomitants, necessary concomitants of our experience. But the causal arrow is one way. And of course, Cartesian, the Cartesian view of two substances that are interacting is the other main view. And I don't want to attribute that to you if that's not appropriate. So there are basic problems with this view. The first is that neuronal activity precedes our awareness, the experiments of Libet. We're conscious of decisions after our brains have made them. Informational functions don't require awareness. There are many functions that are automatic once we learn them. And there are also more extreme examples of sleepwalking murderers and blind drunk examples. And there's also blind sight, where we have informational access without awareness. So there's function there, but there's no awareness accompanying it. And there are also models of neural processes, informational functions that don't require awareness to predict or explain what they explain. So, if we have time, we can go into Libet and the other things. My view is that there are the nervous system, if we want to model the nervous system in its next state, we can have perfectly, in theory, we can have perfectly predictive models of what the next state of the nervous system is without invoking awareness. We need bridge laws that will tell us what aspects of neural activities will give us what kinds of experiences. But the causal relations are in the physical system. It's like a tornado. You don't think that because the thing is a tornado, it's affecting the lower level physics of the molecules that are in the storm. So I'll just wrap up. My proposition, and one of the confusions, is that people tend to separate our awareness from our brains, and we are both our conscious selves and our unconscious selves. We are our brains and our bodies, and there are all sorts of subconscious, subliminal processes that influence our thoughts and actions that we're not conscious of. So just relying on conscious awareness as a causal link. And I'm not sure that you're doing that. The paper's not clear enough to tell, but that's what we should discuss. So I think—
Peter, you have more time. Please go ahead to get into your detail.
Okay.
I can save my presentation to the follow-up session. Don't worry about that.
Well, I mean, the Libet experiments, there are EEG signs of decisions like readiness potentials that precede awareness of our own decision by several hundred milliseconds. And Model A, which is Cartesian dualism, and I don't want to force you guys into that because I think you're probably not Cartesians. I don't know what you are. The paper could be much more clear about your working ontology and how you think about that. And it would be good to look at the literature on causation, particularly Jaegwon Kim's argument. Model A is that you have awareness, and that causes some change in the brain that then implements an action. And model B, and I don't want to make a false dichotomy, there could be other ways of thinking about this, obviously, but model B is that you have volition originating in subliminal brain processes, and the neural signals related to volition build up in neural global workspaces as the brain is preparing to act. And then several hundred milliseconds in the global workspaces, you have signals that are related to what we're conscious of. Both the subliminal and the supraliminal patterns, neural patterns are causing the behavior. So that would be my way of thinking about that. We have to think in terms of supervenience relations when it comes to awareness. And epiphenomenalism does not mean necessarily that conscious awareness is not real in the sense that it exists. You know, I value my awareness, right? I would say that if my awareness were abolished, I would be dead. I think it's as real in the sense of existing as anything else. But we have to get straight the relations between mind, our experience, and the material basis of that. So I think that might be enough to start that discussion. I myself my working ontology is a hylomorphic ontology, and actually Christoph Koch has recently come to this point of view as well. And it's very much latent in theoretical biology that you have a material substrate and an organization that's embedded in that material substrate. And when you have a self-producing material set of production relations, like autopoiesis, then you have a living organization. And I would say when you have a self-generating set of neural signal processes, you have you have an organization that can support working memory, sustained neural functional states, and conscious awareness. But those things are somewhat different. So maybe that's enough. I don't know. We can discuss, I would say.
Let's hear from Francis and Shiva. How would you respond?
I mean, I see the criticism of Peter. They were similar to the ones he sent on the mailing list. So the question is about the function and about the metaphysics, the ontology behind this. To start with, the ontology that I start from is something I have called relational agency, which is a process ontology. It's an ontology of actions. That means material matter is only a stabilized set of actions. So an autopoietic system is a self-maintaining network of actions, of processes. So everything is processed, and everything as process is organized. So organization is the way processes interact the one with the other. But let's not go into that because that can lead us very far. But now we come about.
Well, actually, it's very clarifying. Very clarifying when you say that. So say that in the paper up front. I would say.
Well, I first want to say that the paper you saw is not even a draft. It's a draft of a draft. It's just the very first outline of our paper.
Yeah.
So we haven't done it in any way like a paper.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't the paper.
It was a flow of thought.
Yeah, it was.
Share it with others. It wasn't.
I realize that. I realize that. So that's
So
why
there
I'm
were no
telling you.
references, etc. So
That's why I'm telling. that's why I'm trying to give you advice about how to make the paper better when you do write the draft and then the final version.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give constructive criticism.
And then the other thing is the thing we, let's say, most disagree about is the functionality. I know the Lipid experiment, and there is another way to interpret it. That is that in the Lipid experiment, you see that people at a certain moment make the conscious decision to move their arm. But if at the same time you measure the activation in their brain, you see that there is already a wave of activation starting before they have become conscious, which seems to imply that actually they did not decide consciously. But more recent research on the Lipid experiment shows that sometimes that wave of activation appears, but they don't push the button, they don't move their arm. And the interpretation for me is this wave of activation starting in the subconscious is one of the potential determinants to make the decision to move your arm, but there are others. So what is the function of the global workspace? Here, the global workspace is precisely the forum where all these different inputs from subconscious processes come together, have a conversation, to use the term that cyberneticists like to have, and out of that conversation, a decision is made, and that decision then becomes the conscious decision. But saying that it's the subconscious processes that previously have decided what the outcome will be, it would be just the same as you meeting a person you haven't talked with before, and you come and you have a conversation, and to predict what will be the outcome of the conversation. So the conscious decision is really the outcome of this conversation between subconscious processes. The global workspace is the space where the conversation is being held, and the local field is a description, a model of the potential outcomes of that discussion. Like, suppose that you are discussing with 5-6 people what you're going to do, whether you're going to the cinema, or maybe you're going to a restaurant, or maybe you're going to have a party. Well, suppose that different people bring in their IDs and you make a list like cinema, circus, restaurant, etc. That would be then the equivalent of the local field. And then at some moment, one of those options is chosen. Which one is chosen? It's typically a nonlinear process. It's a winner takes all dynamics. One of them gets chosen. It's often not possible to predict which one that will be. And what the local field describes is the range of possibilities, where the range of possibilities has to do with all the subconscious networks that bring in some degree of activation, that, if you wish, bring in suggestions, but it's a field that means it's continuous. It's not like the list of 5 options from which you need to decide one. It's really a range, it's a continuity.
So what you're describing seems to me to be, and I agree in general with, I think, all of what you're saying, but it's a model of mental function, of informational function, in my sense of the word information. It has to do with distinctions, and there are lots of automatic things that we do. We can drive to work and not realize all the things that have been going on, and not have awareness of that, because we've delegated those processes to lower level brain circuits that handle it without error. So I think you need to think about, again, in terms of models, you don't need awareness per se in a mental model of information processing model for the model to predict the functions that they can carry out. So I'm not against functional models, but they are of a different sort than physical models. And awareness requires bridge laws between 2 different kinds of variables. the neural variables on one hand and the experiential observables on the other. And
That's exactly what we're trying to do to make that bridge.
yes, yes.